Hi, this is Brad with Baker County Trash Pickup. Quite a few significant changes in the business this week, but first I want to start off with a little housekeeping, addressing some comments that we got. A lot of folks are wondering how exactly I run this trash business. How do I know who to pick up? How do I remember them? How to make sure I don't forget them? You may know that I use Jobber, which is a CRM or customer relationship management software for the lawn care business, but I also use that for this trash pickup business. What you see is the current setup that we are running with. We've got a cell phone holder that goes in a cup holder. That holds a phone which is dedicated to the trash business. It's a cell phone number for the business. It has Jobber on it. When we plug into our 2021 Chevy 2500, it also connects via Bluetooth and sends data so we can actually see Android Auto in the background. While Jobber can do automatic routing for you, I do it all manually because I've got a very specific way I want to go about things. So in that software, I have all my stops in order, and when I get somebody new, I just insert them at the point that I want their stop to be. It's a pretty easy process, and through the day, that app will let me just go to each stop, clock in, so there's a GPS stamp of where I was and at what time. And then when we leave, we can complete the job and mark it as done. Another good thing about these jobs in Jobber is that when a customer has one, it sends them a reminder notice the day before. And that's very important with trash because the trash can really needs to be out the night before, not the morning of. Moving on to some of the negative comments I've gotten recently, which are always fun to talk about. I don't know what part of the last video he listened to when he said something about me doing a new industry or trying to reinvent the wheel. I think all I said was that we were looking at trash can cleaning down the road as a new industry we might get into. I don't know if he just didn't like, the word I picked, but he said that I could save more money if I bought myself a proper garbage truck. I'm not sure I follow the logic. Garbage trucks, if you buy them new, are $200,000. If you're buying them used, you really need to be a mechanic of some sort to be able to fix these things, and I'm not. So I don't know how buying a garbage truck would save money when I only have 20 clients right now and it takes me and my wife 3.5 hours to do the whole route that we have. So maybe one day, I really appreciate the optimism, but I think I'm good for right now. And then there's been several variations of this comment, but someone who has done the job manually, not happy with the fact that I'm using liners to try and keep things a little bit cleaner. I mean, the real reason for the liners is because I don't want to dig in a trash can and pick up 15 bags or pick up loose bottles of Coke cans, little tiny wrappers of whatever that fall in the trash can or are put in the trash can because people don't bag all their trash. That bothers this gentleman. This definitely isn't the first time I've seen things like this. In the past 7 years of doing lawn care work, anytime I've made a video about wanting to make things more streamlined, more efficient, easier, simpler, it always comes across as somebody saying, you're just a pansy, you're just lazy. A lot of folks who do this for a living, maybe as employees, and they see someone who is trying to make it easier on themselves, rather than say, yeah, that's a good idea, I wish I could do that where I am, they just say, wimp, whatever. And it's fine, I get it, but it is a little bit entertaining to see how some people they can't accept that something might be a good idea just because it's not what they're used to. In the background, that was me dropping off 3 new cans. That was a good week for us. We had 3 new cans. We didn't lose anybody. And this is also the first week that you are seeing this tipper. So from day one, people have been saying, in addition to just buy a garbage truck, which isn't an option for me, they've been saying you need some kind of arm to lift the trash cans. And that I agree with 100%. So several weeks ago, I did a lot of research. It was very difficult to find a company who made anything like what I was looking for. Now, it is easy to find the actual garbage truck hydraulic arms. And so I reached out to Perkins, the company that made them, and said, hey, listen, I've got a dump trailer. I explained everything I'm doing, and I said, do you guys have any product? So I sent over some pictures of the trailer, some specifications on the measurements, and the gentleman that I talked to, he was very knowledgeable. He said, yep, this product is what you'll need. And we also sell a hydraulic power pack that goes with it, because obviously if it's hooked up to the trailer, it wouldn't be attached to a PTO. So it would need an electric power source. The issue with that was the price. The cost for just the arm itself, $4,400. The cost of the hydraulic power pack was an additional $2,400. Now keep in mind, it's not like if I bought this would be the perfect solution either. This power pack only has a duty cycle of 20%, which means for every 2 minutes you run it, you can't use it for 8 minutes. And you need to allow time for it to cool between each use. Now, what I'm hoping to grow this business to is something where I pull up in a neighborhood of 50 houses and I've got 40 stops. Even if it ended up working, I would be wearing this thing out beyond its expectations. I do not, at this point, want to spend $7,000 before taxes, before freight, on an idea that I don't know if it'll even work or not. Like on its surface, using an arm to tip the trash into the dump trailer sounds like a great idea, right? And even the gentleman that I spoke with from Perkins said, yeah, we have somebody who uses that exact setup and they dump shells into the trailer. And I was like, oh, good. That's good news. But what you'll see is that there are issues that come up that nobody anticipated or that I didn't even know about. And I really didn't want to spend $8,000, $7,000, whatever it was, to try something out that I didn't know if it was going to work. And I'm really glad that I did not go that route because it doesn't work. As I've been explaining all this, you have been seeing me use this lifter. Now I'm going to say some pretty negative things about this lifter, but what I want to specify first is there's two sections of critiques. Critiques about the product itself that anyone who purchases it would run into. And then critiques that I experienced, but I was not using the product in its intended method, so I really can't fault it. The tool that I'm using that I've attached to the side of the trailer is called a lifeline lift. It's also been called an eagle lift. It basically, one guy invented it, and its purpose is to hook to a dumpster at a warehouse or a school, and it assists people who are tipping trash cans into dumpsters. And the idea is they have this hydraulically assisted setup that keeps them from having to lift it themselves. Right off the bat, one of the things I did not like is the price on this. This was $2,000 to get to me. And it's decently made, but I do not think it's worth $2,000. The reason I'm thinking that it's priced this way is the guy is selling it as, listen, if you avoid one workers' comp claim from somebody hurting their back because you have them tipping trash, you know, a school lunch cafeteria worker throws their back out because you made them empty some giant trash can into a dumpster, this is well worth that money. When I look at all the parts and how it's assembled, I don't think it's worth $2,000. So that's one thing right off the bat. As far as shipping, it was dismantled in a way that it would fit in a box and could ship via UPS, but the shipping was pretty poorly done. When it got to me, it had busted holes in the packaging. It was really just set in a cardboard box. There wasn't styrofoam holding it all in. There wasn't a lot of securement. It just, to me, if I'm spending $2,000 on something, when I open that crate up, I want to see every single thing is as safe and protected as it could be. And that's not at all what I experienced with this device. Those are the two main issues that I think anyone buying this would run into. Now, everything from here on out, take with a grain of salt, because this tool is not meant for my application. It is not meant for 96-gallon trash cans. It is not meant to be mounted on a dumpster. And I called the gentleman and I said, this is what I'm going to do. Do you think it'll work? And he was like, honestly, it might, but you're going to have to modify it a lot. So at no point did this gentleman ever lead me on to believe this would work in my situation. He's like, it's not made for this. It could work, but you're going to have to modify it. So that's what I did. I had to cut on a couple things. I had to remove the wheels. I will put in a picture here, but my friend Terry helped me fabricate these little metal brackets here. Well, they're just pieces of angle iron that we welded on, but that's how it connects to the trailer. Because of how low it sits on the ground, I have to drive with it in the stored position. I also had to really mess with how it holds the can. Like, I had to fabricate some extensions on one of the arms, and it just plain does not work. One of the reasons it does not work is because the supports, the arms that cradle the can, none of them are really long enough for a 96-gallon can. It was made for 32, 64-gallon cans, and those are smaller. So you can see it flops around. I have to spend a lot of energy and one of my hands holding the can still in the cradle because the dimensions are all wrong. The other issue is that the gas struts, it has two 225-pound gas struts. Think of the same things that open up your trunk. Whenever you pop the trunk on your car and it stays open, that's because of gas struts. That's what this thing does. And when there's nothing on it, it feels like it's going to throw you off the ground because of how powerful it lifts. But the second you put a 45-pound can on there, it loses a lot of its lifting potential. And this led to one of the other big issues, beyond not even being able to hold the 96-gallon cans. The only 96-gallon cans that it was able to lift were ones that were light enough that I could have tossed the liner in myself with no issue. You've got a 35-pound can, maybe you've got 20 pounds of trash. It would lift that okay and tip it in the dumpster. But do I really need help lifting 20 pounds into the dumpster or throwing 20 pounds into the dump trailer? No, I don't. I need help when there is 50 or 70 pounds of trash in the trash can. The issue is the struts won't lift that heavy of a weight. So I'm sitting there and I'm having to manually throw trash in until I can get this thing down to a weight where it will lift it itself. But by the time I'm at that weight, it's a weight that I could just throw it in. So that's one big issue is on really heavy stuff, on the stuff I would need help lifting, it cannot lift. The things that it can lift are things I didn't need help lifting in the first place. So that's the second big issue. The third issue, and this is an issue which I think is going to be true for any type of lifting arm that I get and attach to this dump trailer, which is why I'm not entertaining any ideas of, well, if you spend $8,000 on the hydraulic lifter, it'll work, or if you fabricate something for cheaper, it'll work. Even if I can get something that holds the cans and lifts them and lifts the heavy ones, the biggest issue that a tipper arm on this setup has is that it all dumps the trash in the same exact spot. And even if I could eliminate all the manual work of lifting that trash from the can and putting it in the dump trailer, then I create manual work of having to spread the trash and move it out of the way of the tipper arm for the next stop. And the reason that's an issue for me and not for garbage trucks is that when you see garbage trucks use tipper arms, they are dumping it much further than just 2 feet before the trash hits the bottom. So that's one thing. When it falls into the hopper, it's got a lot further to fall, which means the trash can kind of bounce around. The second thing that a dump truck has that I don't is some way to compact that trash or push it out of the way. So after it tips, what you don't normally see is some type of packer that is a hydraulic cylinder that's attached to some kind of a plate, and it pushes the trash out of the way and makes room for the next one. I don't have any way to move the trash that tipper drops in the same spot every single time. Even if I had a really nice Perkins tipper, even if I somehow got a real cheap one fabricated, even if you can do even ifs forever, there is no way that an arm on this dump trailer is going to make sense because I have to sit there and manually touch trash every single time. So if I'm not willing to spend $8,000 on the Perkins equivalent, which keep in mind, not only was that before tax and before freight, I also would have to find some way to attach it to the trailer. It would need to be done in a way where I could disconnect the hoses every time I wanted to dump with it. And I don't know if that would be impossible for me to do, but it's outside of my skill set. I'm not confident in my ability to do that. So it's not just a matter of, well, just spend $8,000 and then your problem is fixed. No, it's going to create quite a few more problems as far as how it actually works, and it will never solve the problem that I ran into and would run into with any type of tipper arm, which is that the trash just falls right in the same spot every single time. I'm sure somebody might say, well, why don't you just lift the dump trailer every single time. And like, you could do that, but that's a 1 to 2 minute process every single stop, because you have to lift the dump trailer pretty high up before the trash slides back on its own, right? That's going to get more and more pronounced the more full the trailer gets. It would not solve the problem in a quick and easy way. You would be asking to spend a lot of money to try and rig up some solution. And then the answer is, well, just spend another 1 or 2 minutes every single time you empty a trash can to lift and lower the trailer. No, that's not a good option either. I am pretty negative about my appraisal of this tool. Again, I do want to remind you, it was never meant for what I'm using it for. It was never meant for 96-gallon cans. I don't think it's worth the money regardless of what you're using it for as its intended purpose, hooked up to a stationary dumpster with much smaller cans. But I do get the reasoning behind it of this is something that is marketed to an employer for their workers, and the main reason you're getting away with saying, okay, I'll pay $2,000 for it, is because that's much, much cheaper than any workers' comp claim. And then you can also say, well, look, we care about our workers. We're investing in tools to make it easier for them. For me, even though I am not happy with how it turned out, I was going to say I am happy with how it turned out, and that's not... I'm not happy I wasted $2,000 on it, but I would absolutely do it again in a heartbeat, because it was $2,000 that prevented me from investing in a real tipper arm, which would have cost $4,500 and $2,500 for the power pack. It also was the cheapest way that I could experiment with this idea. Oh, I know a lot of people are going to say, I could have fabbed something up like that for $42 and, a couple of beer cans. And look, I'm sure you could have. I don't have any fabrication skills. I don't have any contacts of folks who are fabricators who would do things at a good deal. The only fabricators I know are running a business, and they're not doing it out of the kindness of their hearts. They make real money doing that kind of thing. So it isn't a scenario where I would be able to get somebody to fabricate something similar for real cheap. And even if I could, it probably would have taken quite a while. So this $2,000 seemed to be the quickest and easiest way to, one, test a cheaper product to see if it would work, and two, test the whole idea of, what I need is a tipper arm on this dump trailer. 8:17 a.m. Unfortunately, no can. Simply because of the one fact that even if the tipper arm performed flawlessly, even if there was a tipper arm where money was no consequence, even if somebody gave me a tipper arm for 100% free and said, Brad, we will install everything for you. We'll put it all together. You don't have to do a single thing and we'll do it all for free. Even if somebody said all that, I still would not be able to move forward because of what you see. If I'm going to have to manually move trash, I might as well just do it the way I was before, slinging the trash in. It's going to be manual strain one way or the other. I would rather the strain be on the ground slinging trash versus me climbing up on the side of a trailer trying to push stuff around with a bow rake. If it's wet, if it's raining, I could very easily slip off of the small steps or the fender rails that I'm standing on when I'm doing that pushing. This trailer's not meant for me to stand on the side of. I'm doing that, at my own hazard. So all that to say, the idea that a tipper arm is going to be something that I'm using moving forward, it was worth a shot, but nope, it's not going to work out. Now here's the question, am I mad about the purchase? I don't think... 8:40 a.m., no can. I don't think I'd say I'm mad. I'm disappointed it didn't work. I hate that it cost $2,000 that was essentially a gamble, and that $2,000 is gone. My wife was like, well, why don't you just return the thing? I mean, I called the guy beforehand, and I told him what I was using it for. I don't feel like it's his responsibility to give me my money back when I bought his product and used it for a way he never recommended, and he didn't know if it would work. And I also cut on it to make it work. And, you know, it's not like he could just restock it and go from there. So I'm not interested in trying to get my money back. What I may end up doing is just reaching out to some of the schools nearby. I believe it can be used for its intended purpose. I don't think I mangled anything to the point where it can't be used the way it was supposed to. So I may see if they just, you know, want it, maybe I can just write it off as a loss, or if they want to pay $1,000 for it, they'll get all of the benefit at half of the cost. I really don't know. I'll probably do something like that, but I'm not going to use it any longer. You also see, and I don't think I fully explained, but I had to remove the wheels from the bottom of this for extra clearance. When it is in its down position, it's supposed to be contacting the ground. So what that means is I have very little ground clearance. Taking the wheels off does give another inch or two, but it's still something where I had to drive with it in the up position. Now that isn't actually as unsafe as you think it might be, because it doesn't stick much further out than my spare tire did when it was still mounted. One more complaint about the product that anyone would run into: the installation instructions were pretty terrible. There weren't any pictures. Some of the verbiage didn't account for the certain parts that were in the thing. I believe it's a product that has undergone several changes over the years, and probably the instructions just didn't get updated with them. But there are confusing terms that aren't explained. One of the handles that you hold on to while you're lifting and lowering the device, it continually comes unscrewed, so you have to keep tightening it down. It's just, to me, it's just not a very good product for what it's billed for. If it were only $1,000, maybe I'd overlook the, you know, the shipping issues and the poor instructions and the less than ideal usage of it. But it's just, you know, it is what it is. So that's kind of the saga about the tipper. I think moving forward, if you pay attention to the walls, you can see that I put all the wall slats on. I went and bought another pair of them as well, because when I bought the trailer, it only came with 2. So I bought 2 more 2x8 by 14 planks at Ace Hardware. Cut those, installed them, bought a 2x4 by 10, I think, and use the pocket stakes on the side. And so I have this little 2-foot pocket where I can throw things in. And I believe that is what I'm going to do on the opposite side. The other disadvantage of a tipper arm that I forgot to mention is that now I can only collect on the right side of the vehicle, which if I end up getting a under CDL automated side loader, which is the long-term goal, that'll be an issue then. So one way or the other, I'll have to get used to it. But if I don't have the benefit of a tipper arm, I might as well not have the disadvantage of not being able to load on either side. So I believe in next week's video, you will probably see that the opposite side of the trailer has the same kind of setup where, you know, 75% of it is boarded up except for a small 2 or 3 foot section where I can throw trash in. Since I'll be going back to manually throwing the trash in, I will be able to direct it where I want, and I can throw it in certain areas of the trailer rather than the tipper arm, which just put everything in the same exact spot over and over and over and over again. At this point in the video, I'd like to direct my attention to my niece Ainsley, who has been watching my videos and tattletaling on me to my wife, saying Brad needs to lift with his knees and not with his back or legs, whatever the saying is. Well, Ainsley, I'll have you know, when you're trying to shuttle trash into a dump trailer that's taller than you are, at some point you gotta use your back. I don't actually know if that's true. I'm just trying to prove myself right against the superior intellect that is my young niece Ainsley. So moving forward, I will pay attention to my lifting procedure. I will begin working out and incorporating good morning exercises to strengthen the lower back and core muscles and blah, 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 if that makes you happy. Thank you, Ainsley. As you may or may not know, the past few weeks I've been going to Trail Ridge Landfill in Jacksonville, Florida, simply because that's what I was familiar with. I had a buddy of mine locally say, well, why aren't you using the New River landfill, which is actually a landfill that is part of 3 member counties, and I live in Baker County, which is one of those, so that landfill is there to serve Baker County residents. I believe part of the reason I never even thought about it is because 4 or 5 years ago, I used to be able to dump things at local dumps that were yard waste. So if I, trimmed hedges or cut down trees or whatever, I could dump that waste on our county landfills. Because of some people who were coming from out of town and abusing the fact that it was a free dump and that there was no kind of licensing check or residency check, no one could dump there commercially. And so that meant I couldn't bring waste there anymore, and I would have to drive to this New River landfill. And I just never did. I just told the customers I can't haul this stuff away. When I thought about a landfill, it was, well, let me see what's close to Jacksonville. So I called and did some research, and the New River landfill is where I'm supposed to be dumping trash that comes from Baker County. And that is because part of that agreement that Baker County has in that tri-county membership agreement for the landfill is that all waste from Baker County will go to that landfill. I'm assuming that's some kind of a dollar thing. They don't want Baker County waste going somewhere else, so Baker County doesn't pay their fair share. I don't honestly know the ins and outs of it. Now, it is about 6 minutes further each way, so it's a little bit longer drive. It takes less time to dump it. So it's still kind of a rough road, which you'll see, further on towards the video, but it is quicker to get in and out versus the Trail Ridge landfill. So as far as timing, it all kind of washes out the same. The big benefit that I'm so happy about is that because I'm hauling Baker County waste, Baker County is actually picking up the invoicing, the tab, for the waste that I'm dumping. So at this stage, when I've only got 20 stops, I'm averaging 400, 500, 600 pounds a week. That ends up being a dump fee of something like $7, $8, $9. It's $30 a ton. So it's about 1.5 cents a pound. So if you have 100 pounds, that's about $1.50, right? You can do the math from there. It is not a big deal right now, but if I get to a point where all 200 of those cans are placed, or I expand beyond that and I'm picking up 400 stops weekly with a garbage truck, or 600, that's going to be some real money that the business is not having to pay. And one of the reasons I'm happy about that is, as you know, those liners are one of the biggest direct costs that I have in doing this work. And now that I don't have to worry about dump fees, well, that's a couple cents each stop that now I earn back and makes my profit look a little bit better. Pretty neat that I won't have to pay dump fees moving forward. I don't necessarily know why they are paying for it. I guess because it is Baker County waste and I'm, doing a service for Baker County. I don't know if that meant that they paid for all the dump fees that Waste Management collected or accrued whenever they were servicing the county. It's one of those things where I'm not really going to stare a gift horse in the mouth. I'm not going to ask why are you paying for it? You're going to pay for me? All right, I'm going to shut up. But man, long term, it's going to be great going here since I don't have those dump fees. So Nathan is a friend of mine. He's the one who told me about it or suggested that landfill. So he saved the business quite a bit of money. Thanks, Nathan. One of the issues with this Tarp system that I have is it will come undone. And I think I figured out the reason why is I wound the winch here in the wrong direction. And as those bungees were pulling backwards, it was pulling the ratchet or sprocket, whatever you want to call it, in a direction where it could slip against the locking pawl. I'm not explaining this right at all, but basically there's two ways you can wind the tarp up. I wound it the wrong way. Those bungees pulling backwards on the tarp and the force of the wind pushing back on the tarp meant that what locks it in place couldn't keep it locked. I think moving forward I will have fixed that issue, but we'll have to wait till next week to see. I am happy with how little blowout there was with the tarp when it worked and just that little side cutout. And I believe that next week, when we have less loose trash in the dump bed of the trailer, it'll be even cleaner. There were quite a few instances where I had to pull trash out of the liner so that I could push it out of the way. but I won't have to do that anymore since I won't be using that tipper. One thing I will say about this new landfill, Trail Ridge had this huge area that was covered in lime rock, big chunky lime rock stones that you could get great traction on, and there wasn't any mud or anything. This area, if it gets wet, it's gonna be a real pain in the rump. And I have been talking to folks who have been leaving comments about, oh, you should have got a 4-wheel drive truck because of the dirt roads. I'm like, no, I really don't need it because I'm not going to be servicing dirt roads. This will be the only instance in this business endeavor where I think I may regret not having a 4-wheel drive truck. At this point, let's go over our weekly numbers. Our customers in cans are up this week by 3, so we have 20 customers and 23 cans on the street. There were a lot of people this week who did not put out any can. Maybe they were traveling. Maybe it was just not there for some reason. And then some who had multiple cans only put out 1. So there were only 16 cans that were serviced. It did take a little bit longer each stop. So I think last week I was getting my speed down. I was down to 1.5 minutes a stop. Using that tipper cost me a lot of time. We did have just a little bit of extra travel time because I placed a can in a new neighborhood that expanded our loop a little bit, but it's a neighborhood I wanted to get in. So for me, that's actually a good thing. Last week, we spent 7 man-hours. This week, it was about 7.2. Our revenue is $175. We used a little bit more fuel because we traveled a little bit further. $24.53 in fuel usage. Are you kidding me? We only used 15 liners, which was $11.25. And we have no dump fees. We generated 540 pounds of waste. Thanks to Baker County covering the tab for me, we had no fees. I think if they wouldn't have covered it, it was like $9.60. I can't remember off the top of my head. We did drive 4 miles more than last week. That's because we expanded our loop by driving to a new neighborhood. That added a little bit, and the new landfill is a little bit further away than the old one. So all that added, 3 or 4 miles. Our total cost came in at $35.78 for this week, which is one of the lowest numbers that it has been, which means that making $175 in revenue, backing out our costs of $35.78, we are left with a profit for this week of $139.22, leaving us one of our best hourly rates so far at $19.33 an hour. If my wife wasn't with me, then that would be closer to $40 an hour. So that's looking good. One final comment I would like to address. There's a gentleman who said, this is stupid, this will never work. The only reason you can do it is because of YouTube money. And I think in my efforts to simplify things, some of the full story is hidden. So when I go over these numbers and I say, during this trip we made $150 and we had $50 of expenses, so we only made $100. In the video where I told you I bought that trailer, that payment's $800 a month, right? So if you're sitting there doing the math, he's only making $100 a week. That's $400 a month. He can't pay for the dump trailer, so he's got to be supplementing it with YouTube. I understand where that thought process comes in, but what I haven't talked about is, and it's just because I don't want to get into the weeds of it, is the way that I'm doing billing. I have about half of my 20 customers that have done paid in full. Actually, as I look at the numbers, I think it's a little bit more than half. Now, I break those down on a per can per week basis just to keep the number simple and easy for calculation, but there is a decent amount of change in the bank account from those annual paid in fulls, and that's what I'm paying monthly expenses with. That's what I'm paying down the credit card from. So yeah, I completely understand that if you're just going by the numbers I've given, it doesn't make sense. Money has to be coming in from somewhere. Aside from the seed money that I put in, which I want to say was maybe around $5,000, the goal is to have the income this business generates pay for itself over time. It's only been a month, but that's what it's doing so far. One final piece of housekeeping. I threw a lot of folks for a loop because on Friday evening, there was an ASMR version of the trash pickup. So a lot of people were like, wait, we wanted the voiceover. What's going on? You're not losing the voiceover. Voiceovers for these things will be every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. and they'll be the most current footage. I think you're only lagging behind real life by about a week. So if you see something, it happened just about a week ago. The videos I'll be putting out Friday evening, those are just the work with no explanation, no voiceover. Some people like the noises, they like the bags crinkling, they like the gravel crunching. It's just another way to make content out of the footage I already have that might appeal to some folks. There were some comments about, you need to make a separate channel for this. No, I don't. I don't have the energy to start a second channel. I don't want to grow a second channel. This channel covers my businesses. That's part of my business, so it fits. If it's not for you, you're not going to offend me by not watching it. But I don't think it's my responsibility to make sure that everything on my channel is something you want to watch. It literally says in the first 4 letters of the title what it is. If it's not for you, just don't watch it. It's okay. We're all adults here. All right, if you can think of any good questions, leave them below and I'll try and answer them. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.